Scouting in the NFL has come a long way. We all know that. Even in the last 10 years, it has become a profession that young men and women are lined up just for a chance. For that, many of us scouts have guys like today's guest, Charley Casserly, to thank. From his start with the Washington Redskins, taking a job with no pay and betting on himself, to the Ricky Williams trade and the decision to take Mario Williams over Reggie Bush. Neil and I talk scouting, football lessons, and so much more today on Scouting the League. Hey everyone, and welcome to Scouting the League. Schedules are out and teams are finished with rookie minicamps. OTAs are well underway and NFL calendar keeps on moving. Neil and I are here for every step, and today's episode is no exception. We love what we do, and hopefully you love what we put out as well. Let us know by giving us that like, subscribe, and share wherever you are listening and watching. Our home at Fans First Sports Network on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or on YouTube. We want your feedback, whatever form that is. Questions, comments, and topics for future episodes, let us know. If you are a scout or aspiring scout, want to direct you over to thescoutingcommunity.com as well. The place for every resource you need, no matter which side of the coin you fall on. For scouts, an exclusive scouts-only network that has a ton of resources and opportunities, helping you bet on yourself and make the most out of the resources you have available. For aspiring scouts, a chance to learn the landscape, network with those in the industry, and gain an edge in your career path. All of it is at thescoutingcommunity.com. Go check it out today. Joined today, as always, by Neil Stratton at Inside the League on X, InsideTheLeague.com, and his blog, SucceedInFootball.com. Make sure, if you haven't already, check out his new book, Value Picks. It is a fantastic one, all about that 2016 NFL draft. Some great stories, something Neil and I have talked about as well. I am Rodrik David at RightStepADV is where you can find me. RSAFootball.com is my site as well. And today's guest, Charley Casserly, a man that really needs no introduction, someone you have likely seen on TV at some point that was a major part of taking scouting to where it is today. His story includes the Hogs, multiple Super Bowl titles, numerous GMs and execs in his trees, and so much more. Awesome. Well, Charley, welcome to Scouting the League.
Hey, it's great to be with you. You guys doing a heck of a job there. Your newsletter is absolutely fantastic, Neil. And Rod, do I call you Rod or Rodrik?
Rodrik, I go by whatever. Usually, a lot of times it's, hey, Scout, and you answer to whatever, right?
That's right. So
Awesome.
anyway, all right then. Good. Well, great to be with you guys.
Yeah,
Before we get
Charley,
started,
it is.
I just want to say,
Go ahead,
Charley,
Neil.
that you were probably as important to me in the formative years of Inside the League, and you probably don't even remember this, but it was funny. The Texans were kind of starting up right when ITO was starting up. And so I remember distinctly being at a Safari Club meeting, and I don't even know how I asked you, but you actually explained to me what the difference between NFS and Blesto are. You were kind enough to greet me at my first ever Shrine game back in the old days in San Francisco, and kind of came up and found me when I wasn't even sure if you'd know who I was. So I need to give you credit for that, because your kindness early in a time when I really was very uncertain about Inside the League was very much appreciated. And so I just want to say that before we get started, Charley.
Well, we all started at the bottom, and we can never forget that. That's kind of the way I looked at things.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. And you're the start at the bottom. Again, not to age anybody, but again, when you got into scouting, it was a different scouting landscape. And again, your years with Washington, getting to Houston, your time on the NFL competition committee, what you meant to that Washington franchise and whatever name they have as their mascot now. Again, your fingerprints are all over it. So let's go back to the beginning. Talk about how you got into football, how you got into scouting. Again, your transition from being an AD and a track coach and sending out some letters. Just kind of tell us your journey. Tell us your story.
Yeah, I went to Springfield College in Springfield, Massachusetts, which is known for developing coaches. That's where they really are famous for, especially in the Northeast. Okay, so anyway, so my dream was to coach, and I started coaching. I was a terrible football player. I told people I played freshman football at Springfield. I was the worst football player in the history of the school. Okay, that's another story. Anyway, but I started coaching in high school locally there. And my dream was to coach in the NFL someday, which was absurd, but it was a dream. Okay, so I started off as an assistant freshman football coach at a school called Cathedral High School, 2,800 students, and a big school. I coached track, I coached swimming there, and we wanted to become the athletic director at 25. And from there, as athletic director, I coached at Springfield College. Which was easy to do because it was in the fall. It was at basically late afternoon and at night, weekends, scouting for them. So I did that for 2 years, and I became a head football coach in a high school, and locally there in Massachusetts, local to Springfield. So I was 28 years old, and I still had this dream. So to simplify the story, my hero in coaching was George Allen with the Washington Redskins. Okay, wrote a lot of books. And so I sent him a letter just asking for an opportunity. So then I sent a letter to every other team the next day. Okay, so why not? It's a letter. And I got over 20 responses, which shocked me. It really shocked me. And the lesson I learned there is when people wrote me letters, I answered the letters. Okay, I mean, I got a letter from Tom Landry, Chuck Noll, okay, Don Shula, Bart Starr. I'm sitting there. Autographs I got. This is great. But I got 2 interviews. I got one in Washington, one in New England. Chuck Fairbanks was the coach in New England, George Allen in Washington. And to make a long story short, both jobs were work for nothing. Okay, that was it. Washington, you work a year for nothing. If they liked you, they'd hire you as a scout for $10,000. Okay, I was interested in coaching. In New England, you would work for nothing, and they would guarantee you a college coaching job at the end of the season. And Chuck Fairbanks brought his whole defensive staff in there, and he made each one swear they could get me a job, which back then it wasn't hard, okay, because there was no limit to coaching staffs in college, see? So there were jobs out there if you had the right connection, okay? So Washington was an interview, and I spent an hour with George Allen in the interview and other people. New England was an interview, but then they wanted me to come down for a tryout at minicamp. So Washington offered me the job over the phone, so I went to Washington. Now, one of the things they told me in the interview was George Allen didn't trust anybody to coach that was under 35. He says, do not mention coaching to him. Okay, that's it. The interview's over at that point. So I didn't. And so I went in there as an unpaid intern. I had nothing. I had $500 in the bank. I had a car with 120,000 miles on it. That looked like it had 220,000, dents on it, rust, everything. I had no money to fix it, okay? 2 years before that, I lost everything I owned in a fire. No renter's insurance. All my stuff came from Goodwill and Salvation Army. So I make this decision, and the first question in the interview was, well, here's the deal. You work a year for nothing. Can you do that? I said, I got it covered. He says, you must be here about the internship. I didn't know what an internship was. I wrote a letter for a chance. In internships, that's what doctors do. I was not in a football office, okay? So I says, oh yeah, I'm here about the internship. Okay. I didn't know what he was talking about, okay? So, but I never thought I'd work for nothing. See, nothing is nothing. I thought I'd get a little money out of the thing. So 2 weeks after I accept the internship, okay, I wake up and I resign my teaching job, my coaching job, which, I was going to be paid. I was on a 12-month contract. I was still going to get paid, but I was leaving in June, see. So anyway, 2 weeks after I accept this, and there's a lesson in here, I woke up on my mattress the bed had collapsed. The Goodwill and Salvation Army, there's no guarantees. It just collapsed. So I sleep in our mattress on the floor, okay? The bed was just laying beside me, the pieces of it. And I woke up on a Sunday morning, it's a true story, it's in May. I break out in a cold sweat. I'm scared to death. I says, I don't know I can get there. I don't know where I'm gonna live, and I have no money. But there's no turning back.
Yep.
So my car made it there. I went to Springfield College, which was originally called the YMCA Training School into the 50s. So I found a YMCA in Alexandria, Virginia, which was 40 miles from the office. I didn't realize that, okay? $8 a night, all right, that was it. I still have the receipt, okay? And then, I went to family members and friends. Each of them said they would lend me, like, I think it was $400 or $500. I never needed it, by the way, okay, to get me through 8 months, and then I could find a college coaching job, okay? Because it's all about stationery, man.
Yep.
Now I had Redskin stationery. Now I was somebody, okay? I wasn't nobody. I was still a nobody, but I had good stationery. So that guaranteed me a job, is what I thought, anyway. I never expected to get hired or anything like that. So, we go to summer camp. We're the only intern. This is it. And George Allen, and going back, you got to take risks in your life, and you got to bet on yourself.
Amen.
Okay, it's going to happen to all of us. Okay, so then in training camp, I go in there, and I'm the only intern. Okay, so George Allen's last words to me in my interview was, I'm looking for somebody like I was 26 years ago or something like that to open the place up and close it up. Okay, that was it. So I reported to work July 1st. I got there June 30th. So I worked in the office. Everybody was on vacation. He could give me a project to do. George Allen had left me a letter to do, so I worked on that. So we go to camp. Now back then you had 6 preseason games. So you were in camp a long time. We went in around July 4th, came out on Labor Day. So my job was to open the place up in the morning, close it up at night. Okay. Then I was the Turk. I was the guy who had to cut the players. Back then we had well over 100 players, so there was a lot of cuts. So at 6:30 I did the cuts. 7 o'clock I turned on the office phone. Did that till 11 o'clock at night. Ran errands for the coaches. Did scouting work. We only had one person in PR. I worked in PR too while I answered the camp phone. I only saw 2 practices in the whole time I was there. One, I sold press guides for 25 cents and they let me keep the quarter. Okay, so that was big. All right, and I saw one other practice, but we scrimmaged the Colts and the Eagles, so I got to go to those and watch those at that point in time. But I did breakdowns for the coaches. Like I said, I did scouting, ran errands. So I did everything, okay? And then they put me into scouting because it was a cheap way for them to have scouts. George Allen traded all his draft choices. So they didn't have a lot of draft choices. So they weren't going to put money into a scouting staff. So they hired interns, okay? And so anyway, so I did that for 8 months, and they had told me during the fall that they were going to hire me, but couldn't hire me till February. So February comes, okay, and there's something in here on the story too, how I got into scouting. You know, I've been told I'm going to get this offer. It's Super Bowl Sunday in January. The controller dies. The controller controls the money, okay, for the owner. 3 days later, George Allen and the Redskins part ways, and he's going to go to the Rams. So I'm nowhere. I got nothing, okay? So one of the coaches says to me that this was great advice. Just stay here. When the new staff comes in, tell them what you do and tell them what you make, and you're fine. You'll have a job. And I'm thinking, I don't think that's a great strategy. So one of the other coaches, his name was Billy Hickman, and he was one of the most respected coaches on our staff, says to me, he says, and this kind of gets back to the changing of the landscape of what it was back in 1977, 78. He says, 1,000 guys go into coaching every year. Nobody goes into scouting as a young guy. If you go into scouting as a young guy, you can go someplace, okay, because you got a work ethic. You got a coach's work ethic, okay? So I'm thinking, okay, they're offering me a job now. The new Bethard hasn't come yet, but the people were there offered me a scouting contract, and this is how dumb I was. It was a 2-year contract, like 17 and 20,000, and I'm making 0, right? Okay, I turned it down. I said, just give me a 1-year contract. Okay, it was just stupidity. Okay, I said, I want to see if I enjoy this, and you want and see if you want me. Okay, so which was really stupid. Okay, but I took that because I'm in the NFL. Let's be realistic. I'm in the NFL. Okay, that's not some college, some small college, because that's probably a job I would have got. Okay, so let's get here and let's see what happens. Well, then Bethard comes in, and the previous regime was not really. You were the young guy. You didn't go to good schools. Nobody's going to listen to you. Which I got that. I mean, you don't know anything. It's your first year. Like I got that, but you weren't involved in like decision making. You didn't listen to it. Bethard was the exact opposite. You went to good schools. Okay, he wanted you to see good players. Every meeting was wide open. Okay, he would listen to you. But I mean, he was in charge, and you knew that. But at least what it forced you to do is this. Okay, and this is why I was inclusive to running our scouts. It forced you. Okay, your butt was on the line when you stood up in front of those veteran people and coaches. You better be ready. Now you may not be right, but you better be ready. And you learned. The only way you're going to learn is take tests. So that was one of the things I carried over. So worked for him, which was great. He was a family man. You went home every weekend. He didn't believe in staying out long on the road, and neither did I. Our guys went home every weekend. Okay, there's too many months and too many days to get the job done than burning your people out. Okay, you really don't have to do that. So that was kind of how I got from the high school coach into a scouting job. So.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's some, man, we could take just that story again for aspiring scouts, for young scouts in buildings, for the way the new age philosophy for a lot of these teams are. I mean, there are so many pieces in there that again Neil and I hit on all the time. Again, I'm in your boat where I remember the dream of scouting, and you have people kind of laughing in your face, like, oh, in the NFL, like, who do you know? And again, it's you put your head down, you grind. When you get in the building, forget about scouting. Do whatever is asked. Again, picking up coffee, running copies, binding. Again, yeah, you'll learn scouting eventually, but again, just getting in there, doing the work, first in, last out. Again, betting on yourself, as you said. Again, look at you crazy. Like, this is a 2-year NFL contract. You only want 1 year. Again, it's the craziness of all of it. And then again, with the way that we're seeing modern front offices set up, where you've got a bunch of low level scouts that all they're doing is gathering information, and they're losing out on a lot of the, as you said, putting your butt on the line for the decision making and being in there and being ready. It's, oh, I just have my job, I'm doing it, and let the executives make the decisions. And again, it's all these things as the scouting landscape has changed so much. Again, not just since the late 70s and early 80s, but in the last 10 years even, as we're seeing front offices change so much. And as you were getting on the road, what were some kind of your initial areas, and from an area scout standpoint, are you seeing that again with what you've seen more modern day? Was the area scout job still kind of the same?
Well, here's the thing. One of the questions you ask are people phasing area scouts out. I talked three of the guys that work with me that are all running departments right now, and they don't see that. Okay, they don't see it at all. Now, let me hit a couple other things, and we'll come back to the scouting thing real quick. I'm sitting in 1982. See, I'm still the lowest guy on the totem pole. I'm still the lowest guy there. That's fine. Okay, and we're sitting. There's a lesson in here. Is what I'm going to do. Okay. And so I've been teaching at George Mason, then I taught Georgetown a long time, about 17 years now. I teach an intern training class, okay? So I teach people every year 2 classes, how do you get a job, how do you keep your job? So it's the same in every profession. These are sport management people too. Anyway, here's a lesson, this one. We're sitting in a meeting, we're going to training camp. The assistant general manager leaves for the USFL. He's making maybe 40,000, something like that. They're going to pay him 110, 115,000, 3-year contract. Okay, you can't turn it down, right? Supposedly. Now, I was offered 2 GM jobs, the opportunity to in the USFL, probably to make that similar money. And I'm making like $30,000. I wouldn't even interview for them. I want to be in the NFL. If you go there, you got to come back. Okay, I'm nobody right now, but I don't want to deal with that. Okay. So never take a job for money. Take a job that can advance you in your career. I went backwards a lot of times financially. I coached at Springfield College for nothing, but it was a college coaching job. I went to the Redskins for nothing. It was a chance to be in the NFL, a shot to maybe get better. And the same thing with New England. I wouldn't have got paid if I went there. So never take a job for money. So we're sitting in a meeting. This guy ran training camp. So Coach Gibbs goes, can anybody here run training camp? Nobody raises their hand. I raised my hand. I got a coach. I have no idea how to run training camp. Right? But I've been an athletic director in a school that had, like 40 teams and 70 coaches and limited facilities. So, hey, I had a 2.5-hour ride to Carlisle, Pennsylvania to figure it out. But there were people up there that had run it, and there was an assistant. Our PR guy had done some. So it wasn't as if I was alone. Okay? So, bang, I ran training camp. At the end of training camp, they named me assistant general manager. I raised my hand. Okay? Volunteer. All right? Then, there's one other story that comes in here, because it's going to relate to the scouting part, what you're talking about. Internships. Okay? When I got my first paycheck, which was, whatever the $17,000 was on one paycheck, I gave it away. I gave it away to people and organizations that helped me in my life. The youth football league I played in, the science department I taught in that high school, and my youth football coach, I gave him $100. That was the most anybody got. He wouldn't take it. I finally told him he had it. I don't know if he ever cashed a check or not. But he said, if you think I've done something to help you, your job is to go help somebody else. So that made me want to start an intern program with Washington, restart the program, because they killed it after George Allen left, see. So I'm running 80 camp, run training camp in 82. 83, I want to have an intern. Okay, we're hiring part-time local help, which was great. But I went to the president of the team. He said, sure, hire an intern. I said, hey, we can get a guy go 7 days a week for almost no money, 24 hours a day. I said, oh, that's great. Okay. So the first intern I hired, I called up UMass, and the guy running the program there I knew from Springfield College says, give me your best guy. I have to have your best guy. So he sent me this young guy, okay, and I interviewed him. I told him, meet me at Boston College. I'm there. I interviewed him. I hired him. Do you know who that intern was? Steve Spagnola.
Okay.
Okay.
Wow.
How about that for a start, huh?
Yeah,
So
that's a good one to start with.
So we gave two things there. Gave other people the opportunity that I had, but we treated it like it was an important position.
Mm-hmm.
It was the only football intern. There was an intern, a PR intern. Hey, this guy was up in the morning with me, helping me run training camp. He wrote a training camp manual. He wrote a drill book based on the drills they used at the combine. He charted for the coaches. Okay, he did everything. Okay, and that's what it was. So the thing I was most proud of, I mean, we won Super Bowls, which was tremendous and everything like that, but starting the intern program in Washington and in Houston gave people a lot of chance. A lot of them have done very good. I know we're going to kind of get into that phase, but I want to throw that part out because that was the origin of that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, that intern program is, again, it's essential. And again, we'll talk about some of those names that have come through that internship program. Again, obviously, you set a really high bar, really high standard right off the bat with Coach Spags, and again, he's still doing pretty well for himself.
He is.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Neil.
Charlie, let's go back a little ways. You talked about the fact that your idea was you wanted to coach.
Yeah.
When the idea of scouting was presented to you, what was your attitude? Was that something where you kind of like, man, scouting, that's not really what I want to do? Or did you really embrace it and say, wow, this is something that can be a big influence on my career and something I can kind of build everything on?
The fundamental difference between scouting and coaching is the timing of the reward of it. The reward in coaching is to seeing players develop. You play a game, you win a game, you lose a game, okay? It's the obvious thing. There's something happening every weekend. And it's a lot of interpersonal relationships with the players, okay, with the coaches. So scouting is the antithesis of all that, okay? Sometimes it's years before you see the result, okay? You have a draft every year. You have free agency every year, okay? So you get a chance to, quote, maybe think you win there, at least at that moment you make a decision, okay? Um, there's a lot of alone time. Okay, you don't. There isn't a lot of interaction with people on the same team. Okay. Fortunately, like I said, I grew up in a culture where we're inclusive, and I had a culture where we're inclusive. Well, everybody was in a room for every decision, including the draft. Okay, everybody had a say in everything. I took everybody seriously. I took notes every time they said something, and then questioned them on the notes when we came back after workouts and things like that. So I was very inclusive about that part of it. Okay, that I thought was important. That at least made you feel like the team was some isolated guy around the road forever. Okay, so I thought that was important, and that came from Bethel.
Okay. And
But the other thing is, when I saw at 28, I'm in the NFL, and then after Bethard came, okay, so then I kind of enjoy what I'm doing, and then I said, okay, I want to be a general manager in the league. So I wrote down everything you had to do to be a general manager, and I started working on that. And the other thing I learned was preparation. I took a high school head job at 25, did okay, but I wasn't ready. Okay, our whole idea was I was going to be ready. I don't care if it took me 10 years, 20 years, or whatever. I was not going to be in a hurry. Just study and get better.
that's that's such good advice because what we get back, I think, and Roderick hears this too, from so many people in the game is scouts want to get in, man. They want to be a GM in 2 years, and that's just not a feasible thing. Now, again, kind of digging in the history a little bit.
Yeah.
You obviously you were George had the over the hill gang and all those kind of things. Not as big on the draft picks per se. But what did scouting departments even look like back then, Charlie? I mean, were they kind of one-man shops, maybe two-man shops? They
Well,
weren't
I can only
scouts
tell
across
you
the country, right?
what we were in Washington. Uh, Dallas was into a lot of things. They had the computer. Bucko Kilroy was the guy who invented all that stuff, really. But they had the computer. They were doing. They did testing on the road, physical testing on the road in the spring. So they had a lot of those things. In Washington, I'm trying to remember. I think we had one, two, three scouts, maybe four at the most. We had a head of college scouting, director of player personnel, and we had a director of pro scouting. There was no pro scout. There was no pro scouting at all. Okay, at all. And then there was a game scout. That's different. But there was no reports. I think they did belong to a scouting service, I believe. Okay, but it wasn't very sophisticated, if you will.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's kind of where we were. When Bethard came, at that point, I'm thinking on scouts. There was Dick Daniels, there was Billy Devaney, there was myself. I hope I didn't miss somebody in there, and of course there was Bobby Bethard, who went on the road, and that was it. And I hope I didn't miss somebody. And so we really still didn't have a pro scouting department. We had a director, Kirk Me, that's right. Kirk worked in both coaching and scouting, pros, and so he also did college scouting, but he did the advanced stuff. So again, we're very limited in what we did. We belonged to a scouting service, which is National Football Scouting, was called United Scouting then. It was fundamentally the same thing. In 82, 83, in that range, the combine was created. And I remember Ken Herrock, I thought he did the first one, but there could be a debate on that and who did the first one, so on time. But that's kind of where we were. We weren't on a computer. Everything was paper. That's probably fundamentally where we were.
Sure. Now, when I recall early
Let me give you
on.
one other thing. We had no film library. Zero. In Washington, they didn't even have they shared the Senior Bowl with other teams. They didn't buy it on themselves. So if you wanted game tape, the colleges had to send it to you. Okay? Which, now Dallas paid money to get tape. Okay, so they I don't know, they were ahead of people in what they did, that's all. We were saying they bribed them. No, they got the tape. That's all that counted. So,
All right. So, Charlie, I distinctly remember, I think we had lunch again early in the 2000s, and you said something along the lines of, I'm not running an employment service here. It's not my job to get people jobs. At the same time, a lot of those people that were working for you in Houston, in Washington, obviously, have gone on to get jobs and advance through. And you've got your own scouting tree, executive tree, what have you. What were the important lessons you were trying to impart to them? Obviously, you talked about your work ethic and the importance of that. But what other things did you try to impart to them so that they were able to take that to the next team, that they were prepared when that opportunity came along?
I think a couple of things. It starts with hiring, and it gets back to now. Not all these people are hired as interns. Uh, so basically, some were hired as interns, and then if we had a job opening, we promoted them. But you don't have a lot of job openings all the time. But eventually, we did have a lot of people that were homegrown, so to speak. Okay, on it. So we looked to hire good people. As an intern, it was a national search. I mean, we did it by letters that came in, but we took it seriously. Okay, I mean, we went through the references, and then we went through references they didn't even know about. Okay, so we treated it as a full-time hiring position, even though it was an internship, and we did pay them. Not a lot, but we did pay them. Okay, so first of all, we got good people right there. The second thing is, I think, the inclusion part of it. Okay, they were treated like the rookie scout was treated the same as the 30-year veteran. When we're in the meetings, you scouted, you scouted good players. You had your reports. You better know what you're doing. You're going to be questioned on it. So they were in every situation from a learning point of view. Okay, every meeting, they were in every draft meeting. They were in the meetings with the coaches in preparation for the draft. They were in the draft room. They were there when we built the draft board, which was inclusive in February, and it was still inclusive in the spring. So they got to see everything part of it. They did pro scouting in the summer, preseason, grading players, so they got a chance to do that. It was a very open situation. If they wanted to learn something, then we let them learn it. And if they wanted to get involved in the salary cap, which we had, one or two people wanted to learn more about that, we let them learn that. So hired good people, gave them total exposure, okay, and helped them when they needed help, and continued to help them in the rest of their career, even after we left Houston. So,
yeah, we talked about again a long list of people that came through your program, came up underneath you, that have gone on to again be really successful in their careers. Again, outside of the saying hard work, smart, intelligent people skills, what were again maybe some stories, some specific individuals that like, hey, this is what they did that really set themselves apart. They were hungry in this way, or they came up with new ideas. Who were some of the people that you've seen over the years that have gone on, and kind of what set them apart?
I don't know that I can give you a good answer on that part of it there. I'll say this, on some stories, okay? So I got some stories, and it may not fit what you're looking for here, but it's a little bit of a learning experience. Dave Sears, the assistant general manager in Arizona. This guy should be a general manager, okay? We used to say, but this is an example of what you do, see, in your job. Every day he ate the same thing for lunch. Subway turkey sandwich, chocolate chip cookie. That was it. I call him in the office, I says, I give him a project. Guy never wrote one thing down. Never wrote one thing down. And got everything right on everything he did. So we're going to go hire him. So I get with the scouts, I says, hey, what do you think of him? He's got no personality. He said he's got like the wall. And he says, is he any good? Oh, this guy's good. I says, I don't care about his personality, okay? If he's good, we're hiring him. That's it.
Amen.
What Dave was this. He did his job, okay? He understood where he was. He did his job, okay? And, he obviously has a good personality, okay? And he's a funny guy, but that was him, okay? Rob Lohman, he's the pro director in Detroit. This guy had about 5 internships by the time we hired him, and for an intern, then we hired him, okay? But he never gave up, see, He never gave up. He did everything he could. I think I don't remember the exact resume, but I know he worked in a college recruiting office. Okay, went in there, volunteered, and worked. Okay, so you had that one there. Jamal Stevenson, he was highly rated, high up in Minnesota. This guy should be a general manager too. Okay, but he's chosen another path. This guy goes to Brown University. He's an Ivy League guy. Okay, he goes to UMass to get his sport management thing. I says, God, what'd your parents think of that move? Okay, we hired him for $500 a month. Okay, $500, nothing. Okay, but he took it. Okay, and again, he had the work ethic. He's a smart guy, did his job along the lines. Those, then I'll give you the Monty Ossenforth story. Monty played at a small school in Minnesota, did an internship with the Vikings. I don't think it was in football, if I remember right. So he does an internship with us, does a hell of a job, okay? We don't have any jobs, okay? So he comes to me, and I said, well, what are you going to do? He said, I think I just got to give it up, go home, and start paying off my college debt, help my parents. I told him, I says, you're not quitting. That's it. Just shut up, come back here tomorrow. So I called the team, and they took him sight unseen, which I would have taken one of theirs too. And I called him tomorrow, you call this number, you got an internship with them. And next year I had a job and hired him, okay? And the other team got mad. I paid him a lot more money than I could pay him. That was the difference, okay? But that was, he didn't give up, okay? But he was good about that. So the one thing I did tell them, though, I says, your job is this. You're the young guys, okay? You're the idea guys. I want you to challenge everything we do. And I gave them the opportunity to do it, okay? And there are ideas they had that I didn't end up using, I probably should have used, okay? And, but that way I challenged them. And then what we did was, it was interesting because the veteran scouts, and we had a lot of veteran scouts now, okay? They say, who are these young guys? And the young guys would say, who are these old guys, So what we had in the spring, we used to divide the draft into 2 drafts. The first 5 rounds and then 6, 7 in free agents. So we had 2 separate meetings. I wanted to have an emphasis on the lower rounds. So what we did, you were in charge of 2 positions, say offensive line, defensive line. So we had a veteran scout and a young scout. And they would have a list of names that we would come together and they would work on the tape of them, okay, in separate meetings. Then we'd have separate meetings in the draft for them. So it was putting the veteran guy with the younger guy, and then they got to respect each other for what they were. And we used to have 1 or 2 social outings a year where just everybody went, and they got to enjoy each other. So it was a thing that, they were learning from each other. So, I don't remember certain stories about people, that are funny or innovative or things like that. But I'll give you a funny story about Brian Hudspeth, okay, Detroit, Director of College Scouting. This goes back to internships, okay, hiring quality people. Jed Fish, he got his first job with us as a scouting intern, and then the coach came in after a week later and said, I think I'd like to use this guy. So then he went into coaching, and obviously he's been a successful coach, okay? But Brian Hudspeth, I go to Tennessee. He sends us a letter, so I go to Tennessee. We're not playing, just to interview him. Now, I was going to scout practice and scout the players, and we weren't even drafting at that point in time. So I bring Hud in. The interview was good. So after practice, I go to get my car. My car's not there. I parked in the head coach's slot and didn't know it. It got towed. I said, Hud, you want this internship? Yes, sir. He says, find my car. He found my car. I hired him as an intern. So anyway, but that's probably wasn't what you were looking for. But
No, that's perfect.
there is some learning in that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and again, that's the beauty of internships and the beauty of being in different businesses. You don't ever know what moment or what opportunity, what little task, what little job is going to put you over the top that gets remembered. And again, finding a car that has nothing to do with scouting, coaching, or football, but again, there's a job to do. Go get the job done, and it's going to set yourself up right. And again, all those names you said, again, all names that other than Monty, who we expect to be in that big chair, that GM chair at some point. All guys that have been doing it for a long time. And again, I love the idea of the young guys challenging. Again, that's one of the hard things, especially in today's landscape, where again, you can quickly find yourself on the street, but again, you got to question respectfully. You don't want to just come in there and upset the apple cart for no reason. But again, if you got a good basis for what you're doing as a young guy, absolutely go in there and don't just fall in line as so many staffs are kind of doing. Let's
See, the
talk
thing
about
you have to do there, you got to read the room, got to know who your boss is.
absolutely.
That's
Yeah.
the key there. See,
Yeah.
in training interns in class, but it's the same principle. I said, when you go in there, it's what you talked about. You got to be great at what you do. Great at what you do. You got to be the best copier in the history of copying things, okay? Because what people are looking for, they're not expecting you to be able to go find players. They want to find out about your work ethic, your attention
Right.
to detail, okay? Are you smart? That's what the training is. So if they tell you to go get coffee, you go get coffee, okay? And that's it. So, but you're right about that. But that's the big picture when
Yeah.
you're hiring people. Can the guy pass those tests? Because if he can't pass those tests, we'll go find somebody else.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about some time in Washington. Some of the teams you built. Obviously, again, multiple Super Bowl champion teams. A best team of the last years by ESPN. Multiple division championships. And a strike team in 1987. Again, some of those aspects of some of those early Washington teams that you were part of, that again we don't think about what it looked like in that 1987 strike year where you started, I believe, the only team to go undefeated. Talk about navigating that to make sure the team was going to be in a spot where, hey, when this thing does get done, we're going to be ready to go and play really good football.
well, at the end of training camp, the league allowed you to sign some players to future contracts to play during the strike. So we didn't sign very many players, but we signed a few players. We signed 3 offensive linemen, which was a key, running back Lionel Vitale, which was a key, our quarterback, which was a key. So, but then it was, you started off with, okay, a couple of principles. You're gonna have to play in a week, okay? So offensively, it's teamwork. It's not names. Find people who knew the Gibbs system, okay? That was the number one priority. I think we ended up starting like 9 out of the 11 knew the system, and we played in a week, okay? So actually it was 2 weeks, but you could say it was a week. All right, so that was fundamental. Didn't want any of the big names in football that were on the street that wanted some money. Hey, they didn't have a job, okay? So why are we going to why are we going to waste money on them? Numbers were critical. We got to have guys to practice with, okay? There was only 3 teams that started with 50 plus players. We were one of them. Okay, so now you start with who are the best guys out there? You didn't last long on that list. We got to have people, okay? So you were signing just people that you could get there, okay? But the numbers were huge, okay? And we ended up with 50 plus players. We only had 8 offensive linemen. That's it. And the 8th guy was the long snapper at 250 pounds, okay? All right. The 7th guy wasn't in a camp, okay, and when he came in and he walked up, he came in and we signed him just basically off a recommendation, okay, from a college, right? And he wasn't even in camp, and the teams were averaging 100 players in camp, but he was a big guy, and so he came into my office to sign his contract, and he's breathing. I says, "Oh, they must have put you on the treadmill." He goes, "No, it was the steps. It was the steps." Okay, but this was it. Well, we did find a lot of guys that could play pretty good football. Okay, and but it was a joint effort. Basically, I led the charge on the thing, but Billy Devaney, Kirk Mee, they helped me. Obviously, Bobby Beathard was involved with the varsity and trying to get that thing straight. As we're not going to have them, etc. But certainly he played a role in the thing too on it. But it was. You were signing guys. I signed Anthony Allen, who had a big performance for us. I was in an airport when I signed him. Teddy Wilson, who was a receiver, who scored the winning touchdown against Dallas. I signed him at midnight, and I called Joe Gibbs. I says, "We got Teddy Wilson. We got Teddy Wilson. He was speed. We didn't have any speed at wide receiver." Henning, the receiver coach, comes in. "We need speed." Okay, well, we re-signed Teddy Wilson. So it was that kind of an effort. The Giants didn't take it seriously. The Eagles didn't take it seriously. We're 4-1 at the end of the strike. The Giants are 0-5, and the Eagles are 1-4. They couldn't catch us. Wow. They're just too many games for them behind to catch us. So, but that was a strike team. Okay. So anyway,
Let's talk about. I mean, being down here in Houston, Charlie, I would be remiss if we didn't talk about some of your picks for the Texans. Obviously, the big one was probably Roderick and I go back and forth a little bit about traits versus production, and maybe the greatest traits versus production choice was Mario Williams versus Reggie Bush. Take us through. I mean, here's a guy that was unbelievable, physically talented, but maybe didn't have the numbers at NC State that people would have expected. Take us through that decision and how that happened and why you ultimately went in the direction you did, which ultimately I will add was the right choice.
Yeah, never listen to the noise. Okay, as a general manager, I didn't watch television. I listened to radio. What time did I have to do those things? None. Okay, but I kind of had a feel for what it was. Okay, with Mario Williams, I went to see NC State play Florida State in the fall. I watched the tape of the guy, and I didn't even look up his height or weight. And we play in 34 defense. This got to be a projection. And then I find this guy's 6'7". Wow, this guy moves pretty good. I don't know how we're going to make him a linebacker or whatever. But when you watch the tape, the guy did his job. He played the run well. He played with leverage. He got upfield when they asked him to do it, but they didn't put him in a position to get upfield really well. So he was a good football player. I came back and I told, and we were, we were going in the wrong direction this season. I told the owner, this is in the middle of the fall. I said, this guy's liable to be our pick. So it got down to him and Reggie Bush, okay? And, the defensive staff was going to be Reggie Bush. The defensive staff was Mario Williams. The offensive staff was Reggie Bush, except one coach on offense, youngest guy. Who the heck was this young kid as a wide receiver coach? Kyle Shanahan, okay?
Really?
He said, you take Mario Williams, okay? The way we looked at it was Mario Williams could play 60 minutes, so to speak. Reggie Bush was a role player, okay? The body type was not built for a long-term career as a running back. He had lower legs that weren't thick, okay? And we learned that with Kelvin Bryant, and we had him in the USFL. He was a great back, better than Herschel Walker, but he had no durability lower body, and his career was short. He was a hell of a player, though, okay, but when he played. So the body type bothered me to take him as the first pick in the draft. That was really it. Now, we could have taken him if we were picking second or third. Well, we thought Williams could play 60 minutes. I think he was a guy that people, outside the scouting community, people didn't know this guy well. There were a lot of people that had him as the first player in the draft. Okay, people didn't know that. The media anointed Reggie Bush as the first pick in the draft, and then they were wrong. Okay, dead wrong. A little bit like Sanders was in the draft we just went through. I've interviewed teams, and basically the teams that I interviewed, only 3 teams, this guy was a backup quarterback to them, talent-wise. Okay,
Yep.
so the media was not on top of this one. Like the same thing what they weren't on there with the Mario Williams, Reggie Bush. But it was the 60 minutes versus a role player. Okay, there was one play in the national championship game against Texas where it's 4th down, and they put in, I forget the name of the other running back, and somebody says to me, okay, this guy's going to be the first pick in the draft, and it's the biggest play of the game, and he's not in there. Explain that to me.
Yeah.
Well, you explained it to him, okay? And then Vince Young was never a consideration for us. Okay, we didn't see the guy as a pro passer, and evidently, and that proved out. But in Houston, that was you made January number 1 when you didn't take him.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think it
and
was
enemy number 2.
Lendale White, correct? That other,
Yes, it
kind
was,
of
yes.
the thunder to the lightning for, and again, beautiful highlights, right? Again, it's always for you talk
Yeah.
about the non-scouting staff. Reggie Bush's highlight tape, that's up there when it comes to highlight tapes. But again, we all
Yeah.
know in scouting, you don't put on a highlight tape to evaluate a player. You got to put on
Right.
4 quarters of football.
Excuse me. Here's the other thing. This is scouting people understand this. Okay, when he ran at USC, track ideal conditions. I
Yep.
think he ran in the 4.4s or something like that. We always added a 10th. That came back from way back when I started, and I never found the scientific study that said that. Okay, so really that was a 4.54. The defenses in that Pac-10 were terrible. So now, does this guy really have the playing speed or not the playing speed for an elite back? Now, he obviously had a good career, okay? But we questioned the true elite speed on him, too.
Yeah, yeah. Again, all those things that you're scouting. Again, the reason why that scouting staff is so important to have good people that are, again, not listening to the noise, doing their scouting work, trusting their own eyes, trusting their own sources. Go ahead, Neil.
The other, I think the other battle that you fight in front offices is how much do you weigh the coaches and their input, given the fact that they haven't studied the player as long as the scouts have, but they also know the system more and what they're looking for more. How did you kind of find that balance, Charlie? And where'd you draw the line there? I guess.
Yeah, the job of the scouts and the general manager is find the players that will fit in the system of the coach. Okay, so you have to understand the system. So we would have great communication with the coaches on the system. People now use videotape, which you could. We didn't do that. Of here's what we're looking for at each position. Okay, but I thought we were very clear. That's number one. Okay. Don't draft for need, draft the best player available. That's crucial. You have many ways to fill needs, not just one, okay? So use all of the avenues to fill needs on that part of it there. Try to have your needs done, at least checked off, maybe not with the best players, but at least you could line up before you go into the draft, okay? So our coaches were involved. We set the list of players for them to look at. If they wanted to look at other players, that's fine. Look at them, and then on the road, what we did is, and we picked this up from Washington with Bethard, we had a scout go with a coach on the road. So they were both there to look at the player together. The scout knew where the parking lot was, okay? That's important, okay?
Yes.
So you park the car, you get in there, you know the room. We don't waste any time. You go right to work. And now, of course, at the end, we had all the tape to work with in the office, so they could do tape there and then go for the workout. Okay, he knows the character part of it, the questions there, and we'd have all this written out. Here's your checklist and the thing. But to me, some coaches were very good evaluators, some weren't. Some could list the order they wanted, okay, but couldn't put them in a round. The scout knew the board. The scout knew all the positions because he was in all the meetings. Okay, he could say, well, I think this guy, here's how he fits in the board when we go by round. Okay, the coach could tell you that particular guy and what he thought. Now, some guys were good on rounds. Some coaches overrated all their players to try to get them higher in the draft. So you have to balance all that. So at the end of the day, it was a balancing situation, okay, between, what the scouts said, what the coaches said. We looked at film together, especially if we disagreed on it. So I had a feel for where it was, and the head coach, Joe Gibbs, really didn't get involved in the draft. Don Capers and North Turner were involved in the draft. So we had a constant discussion. Joe pretty much went with the consensus of the coaches and the scouts were and stuff like that. Okay, except at quarterbacks, he would get involved there. All right, so that's it. Now, Al Davis told me you got to know your coaches. I learned there's certain coaches that we made decisions that were bad decisions because I went with the coach. I learned from that as we went on, and I wasn't going to listen to the coach in certain situations anymore. Okay, and eventually,
Gen X is the toughest generation, and here's why.
So, and I remember we took Stephen Davis in the fourth round, and he had fell in the draft. This guy was a second-round pick, fell in the draft, and our running back coach didn't like him, so I went to the running back coach after we took him. North Turner liked him, see. So I says, Coach, this guy, I know you don't want this guy, but let me tell you something. You're the one coach that can make this guy great in this league. Because you think this guy isn't tough, I know you can make him tough. Well, Stephen Davis had a hell of a career. Okay, so anyway, on that thing there, and the head coach was Bobby Jackson, a great running back coach. So there's a balance in there, but you have to learn your coaches, and sometimes you're going to have to make some decisions they don't like.
Yeah.
But we always had great communication. Great communication.
Yeah, communication. It's certainly, again, there's coaches that can evaluate talent, on the film, do a little bit more of that scouting role, and there's coaches that, hey, let's keep you on the coaching side, and again, you certainly have to learn that balance. There's one other draft question I want to ask you about because it was really the leading up to the draft. There was this player named Ricky Williams that was pretty highly touted, and there was maybe a farm that was sold to get the rights to Ricky Williams. Talk us through the other half. Again, I believe it was Washington, the other half of that team that was part of that Ricky Williams trade to get that Ricky Williams pick. Talk us through leading up to that, getting that offer, and kind of where it led.
Yeah, there's a lesson at the end of this too. Mike Ditka came out after the league meeting in March and said, I'll trade my whole draft to get Ricky Williams. I called Billy Koharek immediately the next day. We're in line, trust me. But I said, no, they didn't have a second round pick. But I said, we're going to have a first and a third in the following draft. The whole idea in that thing was to get the one next year. We already had 2 ones, so we were going to have 3 ones if we could pull that off the following year and still have a one in that draft, okay? So anyway, so we actually had 2 ones because we ended up trading one of them to get Brad Johnson, the quarterback, before the draft. So anyway, just kept in contact with him the whole time. So we get to the draft. Now the team is up for sale at this point, okay? So John Cook was still running the team, but he probably wasn't going to be running the team. So we're sitting there the morning of the draft, and I call him up, and he's the president and the owner of the team at that point. And I said, here's the deal. We can get a lot of picks for this guy, but if we stay there, we got a better chance to get a better player that can help us win right now. He says, do what's best for the franchise. Well, you get the picks. That's what's best for the franchise. So anyway, the first 3 picks were going to be quarterbacks that year, okay? And Couch McNabb and the fellow who went to Cincinnati didn't pan out, okay? So then it was going to go running back, okay? I think running back was going to go next because Indy was going to take a running back. They had traded Marshall Faulk, okay? So Polhan wouldn't tell me who he was going to take, though. And then there was St. Louis ahead of us. So morning of the draft, I checked in with Billy Koharek. The trade was still on if Ricky Williams was there. So I immediately started calling to go back, okay? All right? So, because we were going to, that pick was going to be, I think we were trading 5 and we're getting 11 was going to be the pick, okay? Plus the rest of their draft, and a 1 next year, okay?
Yep.
So we started going back. I finally got Chicago to agree to come back up to 7. So we would get back up to 7. They wanted Cade McNown. I had to convince them Cade McNown was going to be there, which I did, and he was there, okay? So that was the guy they wanted. So now Ricky Williams is there, call New Orleans, bang, the trade is done, they kept the word. So now we're back at 11, and I've already got us back up to 7. So I call up the 7. I'm not going to name the general manager at the time. And now all of a sudden, they changed the deal. They got to have an extra 3. So they're going to screw us, see? So I put them on hold. I says, okay, here's the deal. There's a lesson in this, okay? Because you can go 1 or 2 ways on this thing. You can say, hey, the heck with you. It's no deal, okay? Maybe they would walk away. Maybe they wouldn't. But I said, hey, okay, it's going to cost us a 3. We got a shot at Champ Bailey, okay? Who was the best player in the draft? I says, we'll give him the 3 and we'll stay at 7. Because all I wanted was that extra 1 next year. That was the whole key to me. Because now we had 3 1s next year, okay?
Yep.
So that's it. We took Champ Bailey, and he played both ways. I know there's a big deal about playing both ways and what do you do with Hunter and all that kind of stuff like that. But Champ was their leading receiver going into the last game, and he was obviously a great corner. He was raw as hell at corner, and so we decided to play him a corner, keep him there, and maybe throw him out as a receiver at the end of the season or something like that. And obviously the guy went on and had made more Pro Bowls than any corner in history game. I didn't realize this, but he's tied for the most Pro Bowls of any defensive player ever to play in the game. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
So, but it went into all that, and the scouts did a great job. Ironically, if we had been at 11, we would have taken Javon Curse. So the way our board shaped up. So we were ready to stay there if we had to, because we had that meeting too.
Yeah.
It meant if we're here, what do we do at 11? And we had the players all lined up, and we felt good at 11. So if we didn't make out, then we did. But we wanted to get up and go get Champ Bailey. So we were able to do that. Very fortunate. So.
Great player.
Yeah, it's phenomenal that again, you sit, there's wheeling, there's conversations, there's adjustments to those conversations. Again, your board is done, the work is done. Again, there is always that element of, hey, staying patient, being aggressive, again, going and getting the players you want. Again, at the end of the day, holding to that principle, hey, that number 1 next year is really, really what matters. And obviously, again, history made that decision pretty good for you with Champ Bailey. And again, Javon Curse, really good player as well. Yeah. Again, can't go wrong when you've done the work like you guys have done. As we wrap it up here, Charlie, the NFL is maybe unbelievable how big it's gotten. It is a year-round business. I mean, the fact that the NFL can basically market most of a week to the NFL schedule release just tells you what kind of position it's in. It's, schedule release, draft. I mean, off-season time for the NFL really is still going to beat playoffs for NBA and MLB, all these other leagues. How do you view the state of the NFL, the way the game is, the way coaching staffs are put together, the way front offices and scouting staffs? How do you view, obviously from the outside, the health looks really good. Is the NFL really in a great spot, and kind of where do you see it kind of continuing to go?
Yeah, you got to go back to the commissioners. Burt Bell was obviously before my time, but Rosella was the merger and the TV contract. Tagliabue, there were many great things that he grew the game, but the labor deal was huge with him. Goodell, getting through COVID, the safety of the game. Not that the other people didn't do these things, but the growth of the game is huge under him. Okay, and he was always a proponent of this. And you got to give him credit. He was always reaching out for the next thing. So, the international game, the growth on the television market and the streaming and things like that, it's huge. And I think the NFL is the strongest it's ever been. And so I think that's a credit to him. It's a credit to the owners. And you're right. I mean, a schedule release, give me a break now, right? So how do you make that dramatic? They make it dramatic. Good for them.
It's working. It's crazy, but it's working. You're right. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, it's nice that we can have a platform to put a podcast out, again, mostly talking about scouting, talking about stories behind the scenes. I mean, it's truly incredible that, again, the game is where it is. It's healthy. Neil and I are continuing to do everything we can to, again, push scouts. Kind of one of those areas where scouting has become more of a forefront thing. People, talk about it, want to know about it, but still a ton of question marks out there. And, everything we can do to keep the game healthy and keep the next generation of players. And, again, keep following in the footsteps of guys like you that have built the game up and built front offices the way they are. Again, the NFL's in a great spot. And if anybody's interested in following you, I believe you have a Twitter and X handle, just again first and last name at Charley Casserly. Is there anywhere else you're putting out information? Where can people see you? Maybe shoot you questions, anything like that?
Well, Instagram, I'm on that. I probably would do more of that. First of all, I don't use, once I got out of television, I pretty much eliminated social media. I mean, I haven't. I don't really check my Twitter account. I guess I can now. But I'm on Instagram. People can message me in that situation, things like that. So, I don't mind that in that part of it there. So those are public forums. Once I got out of television, I got away from that. So on that part of it there. But I'll start checking my Twitter and my Instagram accounts. So for that there. But hey, you guys doing a great job. You really are. I mean, you're highlighting a group of people that in many ways have a thankless job and a very lonely job. Okay, that's because there's more scouts than our general managers, and you guys are highlighting them. And I read your newsletter, which is great. And everybody knows who you are, by the way. Okay, so that can be good, which it is. So, but thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, awesome, Charlie. Well, we really appreciate it, and whatever venture, hopefully football, retire, whatever you're doing continues to be good. We really appreciate you being on with us.
All right, great to be with you guys.
Agents, before we go, make sure you go check out Agent Live 360. It is at agentlive360.com for everything you need for your agency, from players to coaches, managing profiles, tracking invoices, sending invoices, getting paid, keeping up on every element of your entire agency. Notification emails, file, folder, storage, ROI, transactions, invoices, calendar, contracts, teams, reps, everything all in one spot for you. That is Agent Live 360. Hop on, request a demo. Yours truly will hop on, walk you through it. I can promise you we will talk some football as well. Sign up now with code TRIAL90 for a 90-day, 3-month trial at just $10 a month for Agent Live 360. That's at agentlive360.com. Go check it out now.